Our next session is a panel led by Sri on automation and digitalization and how do we fix US healthcare. And I think that's particularly topical given some of the other discussions that we've had today around the need for improved artificial intelligence, around automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and getting away from the manual fix-it process that we have been suffering from in healthcare security for quite some time. So I can see that we've got our three panelists here. They'd like to start their video. There we go, Tom's up. So also joining Sri on stage today, on virtual stage, shall I say, is Tom August, VP and CISO of John Muir Health out in California. Powell Hamilton, also a Californian, who is currently managing Centura Health in Colorado, my home state. And of course, Sri, who is also a Californian, if you can get his video working, who is currently working for, correct me if I'm wrong, Franciscan Health.
That's right.
I believe that's in Indiana. Is that right, Sri?
That's in Indiana, yes.
Across country. So.
I'm coming across countries, but it's among friends. So Tom and Paul are people whom we've known for years. And thanks, Richard, for this opportunity. I'll get my video in a minute. I've got a couple of things going on in the background, as usual. Richard, you know how I am engaged in multiple things at the same time. So I think what would you like us to do, Richard? Do I get the introductions, then we go from here, right?
Yes, absolutely. So have your panelists introduce each other or introduce themselves, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I'll get started with the panel, and then we'll have Tom go, and then Powell go, and then we'll have a powwow. How about that? The fun part is the audience is going to get a lot of feedback from this one purely because we've got some very lightning topics to help through this process. This is Sri Bharadwaja, Vice President, Digital Innovation. Not very long ago, I was Chief Information Security Officer for UC Irvine Health down in California. Made my move across the country and helped through the digital innovation process, particularly from a COVID angle. So a lot of good work has been done in the past few months to get our patients seeing physicians and physicians seeing patients, what I called making the healthcare work. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Tom, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Tom August, Vice President, Chief Information Security Officer at John Muir Health. I've been in the space for close to 30 years now. And interesting trivia, I got my start chasing my very first virus with a fledgling company called McAfee & Associates, where I actually learned from John and company on what a virus was. And boy, that was a heck of a lot more interesting than accounting. So I've been hooked ever since. And yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, hi, I'm Powell Hamilton. I'm the interim CISO for Centura Health in Colorado. We have 17 hospitals. Prior to that, I was the CISO at Scripps Hospital in San Diego. Prior to that, I was the Chief Information Security Officer at City of Hope in Duarte, California. And prior to that, I was the CISO at Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach, California. Tom, I got my early start as the Cray supercomputer for Rockwell in Seal Beach, California. So I did a lot of programming, and we certainly didn't know what a virus was back then, but it was just early on connecting to the internet was a lot of fun. Nevertheless, it's been quite an adventure, and it's still a roller coaster ride.
Yep.
Sherry?
Sorry. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Paul. To get started, one of the key things that we've realized in the past few months is how much technology has changed, or our ability for us to provide the level of technology for our patients and physicians has changed. So what do CISOs do in this type of an environment? How do they change their mindset? And what is it that we need to do to help move this forward? In order to address that, I'd like Tom to provide some feedback, and then Powell. Tom?
Sure, thank you. I think, and this was touched on earlier today by a couple of the different panels that have talked about, there's a big difference between compliance and risk. And I think there's a general understanding about the need to become more risk focused, but I don't think there's a real good understanding of how to do it. A lot of the compliance frameworks that are out there are nice, they're great references, but if you just follow them with no view towards risk, it's going to create a lot of problems. It's kind of like driving down the road with your hands 10 and 2 on the wheel, this seatbelt on, a stereo off, and your cell phone tucked away, and you slam into the first car in front of you because you weren't paying attention. And that's kind of how I align, or how I like to talk about risk versus compliance. So one of the things I think we need to do to change the mindset is really understand what the threats are. Get past the FUD, get past the hype and the swirl and the buzzwords, and get to really understanding who are the threat actors and what are they doing. When we did our risk assessment, we boiled it down to 6 different threat actors. There's nation states, there's cyber criminals, there's hacktivists, there's vendors, sorry guys, malicious insiders, and well-intentioned but careless employees. That's really it for us. It may be different for you, but being able to boil it down like that, then it becomes a really good exercise to say, how would they attack us? Each one individually. How would a nation state attack us? Why would they attack us? Would they attack us? What would be the trigger for that? And then how would they attack us? What are their modes? What are their tools? What are their techniques? And then if you get past that, which is really cool, now you model it out in your organization and say, okay, what is exposed to that level of risk? Can I leverage any tools like, say, the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is a great reference tool? How would that apply to our environment? And then you can start to identify where those attacks converge. And I think this is really where the rubber hits the road between risk assessment and a compliance-based program, is really understanding the risks and now how to build controls to address the risks. And that is, you go to your frameworks and you pull the controls that make sense based on the risks that face your organization. That's a mindset shift that I've seen some of my peers adopt. And I see more and more going that way. There's certainly been some great work in the community, but I think we need to get there. I think more and more people need to get there over time, because I still see a lot of people focused on compliance measures. And then, and with that, just identifying the single points of where to invest to get the best bang for the buck. That's really the kind of the high level of mindset shift that I think we need to take, because we'll be more efficient, more effective, and we'll be able to present a much more compelling business case, because it's not using swirl, it's not using buzzwords, it's not using a lot of hype. It's just really straight, honest stories that board members and senior leaders can really appreciate and get behind and fund. So.
Wow, Tom, you really laid it out quite well. I remember my first CISO job, we just had the challenge convincing everybody that security was important. I think it's still a challenge today, but 12 years ago, that was just a nightmare, and working hard to get funding. The journey also was dictated quite a bit on funding. I've worked for nonprofits for most of my working career, and unfortunately, all the dollars weren't always there, and we had to be, we would have to stretch a dollar as far as we can. So between lack of interest and lack of funding, security has been a real challenge. Obviously, over the years, intrusions and loss of intellectual property and PHI has helped quite a bit. It's helped the awareness quite a bit. Leaders who personally have been affected by breaches, that has helped. So we're at the point now where funding's less of a problem, but at the same time, we do have to prioritize our projects. And now it's really resources. And we started out with large on-prem systems and adjusting to cloud environments and migrating. Definitely the healthcare space is behind and we still have some challenges. But Tom, you're absolutely right. There is a difference between security, risk, and compliance. We have a compliance piece that we have to abide by, and that's not always easy because even at my boss at past environments, we're on the compliance side, and that's a focus they have. And back to education, you got to educate people what the difference is so you can get proper funding and I would say security respect on both sides. True?
No doubt about it. I mean, we've got to understand how it's changing and what is changing as well. Several CISOs that I talk to every day have this philosophy that change is the constant, right? Changes to figure out how to make it work, and that's why all of our CISO lives are interesting, because we always have been surrounded with a lot of change, and to start changing, tracing, and tracking attack vectors, trying to figure out those threat actors that are constantly trying to, in some way, shape, or form, harm the healthcare system. We are there to protect that, and that is an exciting time. Having talked a little bit about change, maybe we should talk about, Powell, talking about the landscape we are in terms of telemedicine, what's going on. You can talk about that and what that has brought about in the past few months for us and how we see that ahead.
Well, absolutely. As you know, in the last 4 months, we've had a major change. And I think everybody had to work hard to get their, not only their telemedicine environments up to speed, but just to get their conferencing up to speed so administration functions can continue to exist. I think just about most hospitals had the challenge of getting the additional connections into their environment so their remote staff could just get their main functions done. Telemedicine, though, has gone through quite a changes. We have on the market, she's probably over 150 telemedicine applications for the mobile devices. We have plenty of wearables that we have to review. And boy, I'm going to get in trouble, but I love physicians, but they're always bringing a new toy or an investment into their environment that we have to quickly assess and make sure that they meets the minimum requirements. So right now we are in hyper mode evaluating new products, and I would say at least 10 to 20 new products a month that I'm evaluating. And quite frankly, most of them are failing because they don't meet the minimum standards that we require. And obviously that's not making people happy, but it is maturing the telemedicine toolset market.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch I could add on this one. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I know. You got a plenty, so go ahead.
There's a lot of potential technologies out there for telemedicine and remote work and online collaboration and video visits and all that. A couple thoughts to consider. One is I don't think we can say no if we don't provide clear alternatives and the support necessary to make it easy to adopt those alternatives. If you just say no, life will find a way. The doctors will find a way to get around our controls. we need to make it as easy as possible to swim within the lanes that are the safest. And so I think we need to provide clear alternatives and then all the education and support to make it easy to adopt them. And one of the ways that we're doing it at Muir, collaborate with your stakeholders, learn what their needs are. You have doctors, nurses, clinicians, hospital operations, HR. We have our foundation and investment teams. They have community outreach. They have a lot of needs that are different than what IT might have. So learning what those are and then understanding what the business environment is that healthcare especially is in. I mean, we're getting crushed financially. Everyone is. People aren't able to earn revenues the way they used to. So they're, getting a lot more expenses. Well, the business is stressing pretty hard about that across the US. So what do? Wow, what a great time for us to be an enabler and a voice of reason in all of this. So by working with the stakeholders to understand what technologies they like, what the real risks are associated with them, not FUD, not generalities, but very specifics. And then really leveraging the difference between being right and being effective. I talk to our team all the time. The most technical folks want to be right because it's just the right thing. But is that really effective? Or is good enough good enough? Because this isn't a good time. This isn't a time for perfect security. There is a time when you're going to have to give. And how do you do it in a way that doesn't put you at risk with regulators and other groups? Well, one of the things that I think we can look at is kind of an informed consent model where we educate the business. We fully understand what the risks are. We identify what the risks are and communicate them upwards, and then leverage our governance processes to push decision-making to the right level. And so that people can understand the pros and cons, what certain groups want to push for and what certain groups don't want to push for, and let them make the business decisions they were hired to make. And we're just here to help support them. We put controls in as best we can. We monitor the heck out of them. We make our recommendations, but at the end of the day, they're responsible for running the overall healthcare system. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an attorney. I'm a security professional. So I provide that sort of insight. So I think that's super important. And then last thing, I'm sure you all have heard this one, but other hospital systems use this technology. Why are you guys being such
Why are you
a
not
problem?
doing that? Yeah. Why is you being so difficult, right?
Yeah. And so here's what we respond. This is how I respond to our senior leadership, and it seems to go well. So take it with a grain of salt. But I say something along the lines of, I can't speak for the security programs or levels of skill or experience in the organizations you're referencing, but we're all required under HIPAA to evaluate third-party vendors that store, process, or transmit PHI. A widely accepted approach in the industry is to match the level of scrutiny against the risk being presented to the organization. Given the nature and the quantity of the data that's being looked at here, the number of patients that would be involved, we're doing X. Does that make sense to you? It's a rational view, it's a level view, it's not overreacting, and it really speaks to our need to play within the regulatory guidelines, but not that we're wild cards. We're not going off and being overly strict or overly hardcore. I just think we're trying to be reasonable. And I bring up the informed consent model. We'll raise it through governance. We bring the doctors in, the nurses, clinicians, operational people. We bring them into the governance meetings and say, hey, here we have a technology. It doesn't meet our standards, but let's talk about what that means to the business. And then they present their case and we present our situation, and the business makes a choice. Now, we're pretty risk averse, so we choose generally pretty conservatively. But I think that's a good way to establish trust. And in this hyper stressful time, what a great opportunity for CISOs to create an environment to build trust with the organization. I just think it's a great time for us if we step up and do it.
And I think, that's what is expected of us right now. And that is what is going to be the future, right? I mean, just gazing to the future down, the way we will be starting to look at this is not just purely based on understanding what the risks are, but also managing to the risk, but in a way that we can explain to our business customers what truly is it that they are looking at as well from a risk perspective. So so thinking about that for the future, I think we have what 3-4 minutes now. Tom, thoughts on the future and what you're thinking?
I think it's a tremendous time for people in the security industry to make a profound difference, but it really comes down to a mindset and seeing yourself as a partner to business. It's an opportunity, if you wish to take it, to be a calming voice of reason, to be an enabler for the business, to help educate and guide people. These are really uncertain times for everybody. If you talk to your CFOs, you're going to hear a lot of very stressful stories about financing and healthcare. If you talk to your CEOs, same thing. They're talking to the peers around the whole United States and what they're facing. Wow, what an opportunity to help them at least navigate some of the technical risks that we see. You know, I'm in touch with our local FBI office. I'm pretty connected there in terms of learning and what the current threatscape looks like from their view. And I share that and I say, hey, here's what we're facing. Here's the reality of it. Here's our recommendations. And you just do it in a very, I think, a very business-like manner. And then they can make their choices. So that would be my 2 cents. I'll shut up now and let Powell talk.
No, you did quite well. I totally agree. Just a few takeaways based over the last few months. Obviously, work from home is now becoming the default model. So we've always said that the perimeter is dead. This is definitely the last nail in the coffin. Cloud structures, clearly, we didn't get time to talk about that, but most large health organizations have an on-prem investment. Clearly that's shifting, but that's going to take time because we need to get our full investment out of our on-prem equipment. The attack surface now is much more larger, and we have to educate our work-at-home staff that now there are a lot more new attack vectors that we have to be conscious of. Great. You're on mute.
Hey, Sheree, I think he's talking to you.
I'm on mute. Oh, sorry. I was talking to Richard and trying to figure out if this Richard has got the last few things, because I know we got a minute or so left. Richard?
No, I think you answered most of those questions. We are right up on time, so I'd like to thank 3 experts from California, 2 of whom are slightly displaced at this moment, well, one displaced, one metaphorically displaced, I suppose, if we include all the changes that are going on. But thank you each for sharing your insights on the future of healthcare and how automation and digitalization are going to impact us moving forward. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If there are any additional questions, I will be sure to forward them to you. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Tom.